crypto products and NFTs are unregulated and can be highly risky. There may be no regulatory recourse for any loss from such transactions.
Well, in the rapidly evolving realm of cryptocurrency, regulatory compliance has become a central concern for businesses and investors alike. Well, as the popularity of digital assets continue to surge, governments and regulatory bodies are working to establish framework that balance innovation with consumer protection and financial stability. Hi, my name is Kshitij Anand, and I'm the editor for ETMarkets. And today we'll be discussing on how investors can navigate the intricate landscape of crypto regulations with Shehnaz Ahmed, who is a senior resident fellow and lead Fintech at Vidhi Centre for Legal Policy, and Amit Rangari, who is head of legal at Mudrex. Welcome to the show, Shehnaz and Amit.
Hi.
Thanks, Kshitij. Hi.
Thank you so much for being part of this segment, Shehnaz, as well as Amit. Now, Shehnaz, let me come to you first. Now, the government has introduced a taxation framework for crypto assets, and that has brought it under the ambit of Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. What do these legislative interventions mean for investors, and does it impact the legal status for crypto?
Thanks, Kshitij. So I think the taxation framework sort of gives in some sort of a clarity insofar as how crypto assets are going to be taxed by sort of imposing a flat 30% rate tax on crypto gains, and there is a 1% TDS that is there. One important development here is basically for the first time, we have a definition for virtual digital assets. I mean, we can always argue about the merits of this definition, but yes, now the Indian law has a definition for virtual digital assets. A significant regulatory intervention, which I personally feel is actually the notification issued under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which brings your virtual digital asset service providers, which is essentially your crypto exchanges under the ambit of India's anti-money laundering law. What that essentially means is that now, your exchanges have to register themselves as reporting entities under the law. They have to conduct KYC. If there is any suspicious transaction, they have to report it to the concerned authorities. This is a significant development considering that, globally there has always been concerns around cryptos being misused from an illicit financing perspective. So this is a welcome move. Having said that, I think the question, which is essentially what does it do? I personally do not see too much from an investor perspective. I mean, of course, these interventions gives government a lot of power to look at how funds are moving in the crypto economy. But for investors, if you see, what is a crypto asset? Is it a security? Is it a payment instrument? What happens when there is a fraud? Is there a specific regulator that they need to approach to? What kind of obligations are, exchanges or any sort of service provider sort of subject to? These questions remain sort of unanswered right now because we do not have a regulatory framework, a comprehensive regulatory framework for crypto assets. What we do is that we sort of still relying on the fact that your service providers will be carrying out due diligence and they will be transparent in their dealings with their investors. So it's still moving on that good faith basis, as if I may say so. But perhaps these are critical issues that now needs to be addressed, given that I feel that India is a country with one of the highest crypto asset user bases. So yeah, that's my take on perhaps what do these interventions eventually mean for for consumers.
No, definitely that's a move in the right direction. And Amit, let me come to you as well. Now, given the regulatory treatment of crypto assets, what are the important points for consideration for investors who are investing in this particular asset or in this sector at this point in time?
I think with this regulatory intervention, what it has provided is some sort of recognition as to how this industry exists and crypto exists as a asset class. And this can be viewed as, from government side, that this can be viewed as a legitimacy provided to entire industry, which was existing from like 4-5 years now. From investors' perspective, it will mean that they can drive more confidence as to this is now been recognized by by regulators, and we saw the G20 declaration as well. All these declarations, or all these statements, all these it should give them some sort of confidence, and also direction as to government is intending to move in the direction of identifying, recognizing, and then maybe at later point in time, we might have a fully blown statute or regulatory guidelines to regulate this entire space. So I think investors should draw a lot of confidence, a lot of faith, trust that that government is now looking at this space, and they intend to do something about it.
No, absolutely. In fact, the G20 meeting was indeed a booster shot for the crypto assets as well, and gave a good bit of confidence to the industry. And Shehnaz, let me also come to you. Now we are talking about crypto assets, but there is a testing going on for the digital rupee from the Reserve Bank of India. Now, from a legal perspective, how does, let's say, a digital rupee differ from cryptos? Does the issuance of digital rupee impact the crypto investment? Now, these are some questions which I'm sure investors have in mind the moment when digital rupee or the news about digital rupee came into the existence.
Thanks, Kshitij. It's interesting you bring this up, because I feel that sometimes there is a lot of, confusion regarding, digital rupee being perhaps a substitute to crypto, considering that this was one of the reasons why many central banks sort of decided to look into developing their own digital currencies. But having said that, what digital rupee, as the name suggests, or central bank digital currency, is just a digital version of your fiat currency. It is a recognized legal tender under your law, which means that you can go and use this CBDC for payments at any particular place. Unlike this, of course, crypto assets are not issued by a central bank. They are not the central bank's liability. They are issued by a private entity. Now, the original aspirations of crypto assets, or they were initially known as cryptocurrencies, were obviously to sort of function perhaps as an alternative to fiat currencies. But over the course of years, I feel that the use cases have evolved. At least in India today, if you see, the purpose for which a retail investor is going to invest in a crypto asset is not going to be the same as to why they would purchase a CBDC token for. So I think to that extent, from a legal perspective, obviously they are very different and they are not substitutes of each other. So it's not going to be that, the issuance of CBDC is going to impact the investment in crypto assets per se. And this is particularly true, I feel, for unbacked crypto assets like stable coins. But, obviously having said that, unbacked crypto assets like Bitcoins and all, but having said that, there is also stable coins, which sort of try to deal fluctuation or volatility issues that crypto assets like Bitcoin may have by trying to peg its value to a stable asset, like, for instance, let's say a fiat currency. Now, because of this peculiar nature of stable coins, there is a possibility that they might become a important tool or instrument for making payments, especially since many governments are also looking at their use cases for cross-border payments. So I think to that extent it might be useful going forward to look at how stable coins are opted for, how their adoption is, and monitor its rise and its impact on on CBDC. But again, from a legal point of view, these are very different and they are not substitutes for each other.
Right. Now, good that Shehnaz, you cleared that up, and I'm sure investors would take note of that. And yes, both these things are very different from each other. Now, you did talk about fluctuations. Now, Amit, let me come to you. In the light of recent volatility, or you could say crashes that has happened, let's say in FTX or Terra Luna, and on these schemes involving crypto assets, what are the legal remedies that are available for aggrieved investors? Now, I think this is something which every crypto investor or a potential investor who wanted to invest in the crypto asset would want to understand, because everyone would knows what happens in equity, or everyone knows what happens in let's say if debt market fails, or there is RBI will take care of them, or from equity perspective, we have SEBI, who look after these. If there's a mismatch in that. So your take on that, Amit?
It's a concern for both the investor and for companies like us, because if these incidents happen, it is not good for the investor, for the company, because we're trying to build confidence, we are trying to build trust in the entire ecosystem, and like the biggest USP of blockchain is that it is the most secure frame right now, and when these incidents happen, it just it makes a dent in the efforts we are making from some time now. Now, coming to the remedies available, it's actually if I take India as an example, and if I take US, compare it to the US, you have a lot of options. You can reach out to SEC, that is their security exchange board. Then you can reach out to Trade Commission. Then you can reach out to the the cyber fraud teams, departments in the US. But when you compare to this situation to India does not have a regime. So if you go to RBI clearly says that they don't regulate. They have nothing to do with crypto as of now. Right. If you go to SEBI has always been clear that they don't intend to regulate this entire space. But then you're left with if you are aggrieved, then you have the option of going to the police. There also the problem is that police will apply typical provisions of IPC or CIPC to the entire situation. It makes the whole situation very difficult for the investor. So I think as of now, the only option available to an investor, if there is a fraud, then they can reach out to the law enforcement agencies. But there is a need to address this issue. There's a need to have something stringent, something onerous, and something very direct, in the sense that you can't apply typical provisions of IPC or CRPC to the situation and try to force it. And then you go to the court and you follow the procedure. It's just not going to yield desired results. So I feel there is a need to have a stringent framework to address this concern.
Right. In fact, there is definitely need to address this issue and have a stringent framework around it. Now, Shehnaz, we were discussing about the G20 meeting which happened earlier this year. Now, the New Delhi Declaration under this, India's G20 presidency endorses the Financial Stability Board FSB recommendation for regulations of crypto assets. What will be the implications of this declaration on, let's say, India's approach to crypto asset regulations? Your take on that?
Sure. Maybe let's just take a step backward and perhaps understand what was the FSB and IMF trying, or the International Monetary Fund sort of trying to do. So they have been looking on tracking how crypto assets have sort of evolved in different economies, what kind of financial stability implications have arisen from it, and accordingly they have suggested why it is necessary to have global oversight frameworks and global coordination for crypto asset supervision. So I think to that extent this is a positive development, because it talks about that regulation is the way forward. And in fact the FSB work and IMF's work very specifically says that the bans might be a very futile exercise, because it is almost impossible to implement a ban in a crypto economy. So I think to that extent there seems to be some sort of an agreement that perhaps regulation is the way forward. Having said that, this also does not mean that India is now bound by this declaration and will eventually come and start regulating or pass a law. But I think all countries, what it will do is that weigh in their national priorities, regional context, before deciding, what will be the appropriate response to crypto assets. As Amit said, the PMLA interventions perhaps have given some sort of a legitimacy, but right now, as we were discussing, there still remains a lot of unanswered questions, especially what happens to investors when there are crashes, when there are sort of frauds, scams that are happening. Even from a business perspective, there has to be some clarity. I mean, it's been so many years since, we can't have the same conversation around banning and not banning. So there has to be some sort of a regulatory clarity about this industry that has been in existence for some time. So I think this is perhaps the G20 declaration is actually an opportune moment for India to now seriously think about regulating crypto assets. And it will be, I mean, it's critical from an investor protection point of view, from an Indian business point of view. Existing laws perhaps are not really sufficient or well equipped to deal with this industry, and there is a need to now think about what kind of regulatory interventions are necessary.
Right. Now, in fact, I'll add to this question only, Shehnaz, that globally, how are other countries regulating the crypto assets, and are there any lessons that probably India can draw from global experiences, according to you?
Yeah, so I think globally also you'll see that gradually the move is towards regulation. Most developed economies are moving towards regulation. The pace obviously has been different. If you look at the European Union, they have a very comprehensive framework on crypto assets, which is your market in crypto assets regulation. And it addresses a lot of these issues that we have discussed so far today. You also have countries like Hong Kong, Malta, which have their own legislations for crypto assets. There are again countries like India also, which have sort of first attempted to regulate it under their anti-money laundering laws, and they are sort of testing how then the regulatory sort of framework can be expanded later on. You have countries like USA, you have countries like Australia, which are using their securities laws to sort of regulate crypto assets. But I think a fundamental issue in all this is that needs to be considered is that the regulatory response is actually very closely tied how your financial architecture is structured. So let's say for a country with a unified financial sector regulator, which like a Singapore or a UK, it's easier to design a regulatory response because you have one regulator which is designing, implementing laws. That is not the case in India. We have 4 financial sector regulators who have a very well demarcated area of jurisdiction. So there is always this question of where does crypto assets fall, and that is the reason why earlier also I sort of said that perhaps there is merit in exploring or in thinking about crypto asset as a sui generis asset class, and have a more bespoke legal framework, because your existing laws, whether under securities laws that SEBI administers or under payments laws, or which RBI is administering, all crypto assets cannot be fitted into those laws. So a bespoke legal framework will be, I think, a good way to look at it. We already have SEBI and RBI with their respective expertise. Like, for instance, RBI has an expertise in prudential regulation. SEBI has an expertise in market conduct regulation. And I think it's time to sort of leverage that expertise from these regulators and regulate stablecoin arrangements, perhaps as a part of RBI's framework, regulate service providers as a part of SEBI's mandate. So I think these are some of the novel ways that we have to think about in regulating crypto assets, because retrofitting them into existing frameworks might not be the answer forward.
Right. Now, Amit, Shehnaz actually, raised a very crucial point, and having a bespoke structure or regulations around cryptos. Now, tell me, is there a viable or a real world sort of a use case for crypto which warrants regulatory and policy intervention to support the growth of the sector in the near future?
Absolutely, there is, in the sense that crypto is an asset class. It is, if we compare the times where my father was earning, his investment options were like mutual funds. Mutual funds not that much. Mutual funds also gained momentum in last few years. But say insurance or FDs or conventional
post office. Probably post office was pretty popular around
exactly. Yes. But now, if you ask, if not even me, if someone who is currently studying in an engineering college or any good college for that matter, and about to start a career, what are his options or her options are going to be? And obviously, like we have adopted UPI, we have adopted other modes of payments and investments after a lot of resistance. Right. It's not that it was not easy for private sector insurance company to sell insurance in India when LIC was there. Right. Also, SDFC or any other Standard Chartered to operate in India when SBI is there. Right. But they after a lot of resistance, people have accepted these options, these investment options. So I think crypto is going to be the next option for the coming generation. We will see a lot of adoption. We will see a lot of talks around crypto. And when there are a lot of people who are talking about crypto as an asset class, there is a need of regulation. There is a need to protect the consumer. There is a need to protect the industries or businesses who are operating in this space. So, and it can solve a lot of problem. Blockchain has already proven its its viability, its utility, and crypto is premised on blockchain, right? So in that sense, and also like when you have to make a payment, say you have to make an overseas payment, you go to the bank and you do a lot of formalities with respect to your FEMA, with respect to your foreign. You have limited options. You have to pick one of the options provided to you by your AD bank. But if crypto is replaced or take prominence, then all these issues are sorted. All these issues, but I'm not saying that this should happen without any regulatory oversight. Obviously, there is and we've been saying this from a very long time that we want to be regulated. We want to operate in a framework. I am aware of what is going to happen. Investor is aware of what is going to happen. There is a regulatory body who's managing the entire affairs of consumers and the business. So I think if this happens, this should take place only when there's a regulatory oversight.
Well, absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you so much for your time, Shehnaz and Amit, for shedding light on the critical importance of understanding and adhering to regulatory framework in the dynamic environment of crypto assets. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Shehnaz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Crypto products and NFTs are unregulated and can be highly risky. There may be no regulatory recourse for any loss from such transactions.